So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We here on stage, we cannot really see you, so we so we are a bit blinded by the light. So my name is Dora Czernusz. I am Director for Climate and Environmental Policies at Equilibrium Institute, which is an independent think tank based in Budapest in Hungary. And new people coming, wonderful. And I have the honor to lead today this discussion about the opportunity that the building stock represents in the green transition. My partners in the discussion will be Jan Csampor, who is Director of Energy Efficiency and Savings Department at the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Czech Republic, Eva Gerőházy, who is Senior Researcher at the Metropolitan Research Institute, and Miroslav Lopor, Head of Energy Strategy Team at Deloitte, Czech Republic. So it's going to be a V2 panel, actually, between Hungary and the Czech Republic. From the beginning of this conference, we heard a lot about electricity market, about natural gas market, the possible way forward for boosting renewable energies and for decoupling from Russian energy imports. But energy efficiency was not that much in the focus of the discussion as it could have been, or as it should be. One of the mottos of the EU's energy policy is energy efficiency first, and I think we really need to keep this in mind. If we consider that the buildings are responsible. If we consider that the buildings are responsible for 30–40% of final energy consumption in the region, energy efficient renovation of the building stock is a crucial part of an efficient, sustainable, and fair energy system. For instance, in Hungary, just as an example, almost 40% of final energy consumption is related to the building sector, and around 40% of greenhouse gas emissions are also connected to the building sector. So another interesting data for Hungary is that 80% of the buildings that stand now will be standing in 2050. So this means that if we do not tackle the problem of the inefficient building stock, there will not be climate security, climate neutrality, nor energy security. But we should not look at this as a problem, but rather as an opportunity, because there are sectors where technology developments are still not there. We don't know exactly, for example, how we want to decarbonize heavy industries, because we don't have all the technologies that we need. But for the buildings, it's not the case. We know the technologies: insulation, changing the windows, efficient heating systems. So we just have to implement these at a scale which is needed. We need long-term building renovation programs, and we have to ensure that both financial and human resources are there all along the way. So this is just what we need. Seems easy? No, it is not. We all know that buildings must be renovated to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels, to reduce our dependency on fossil energy imports, to increase energy and climate security. So why is this still not happening at a scale that is needed? So this is the topic that we will talk about today, and hopefully by the end of the discussion we will get a better idea about the obstacles, the challenges, and hopefully also about some solutions to tackle this this problem, this challenge of renovating the building stock. So now I am turning to my fellow panelists, and first I am asking them to deliver their introductory remarks about how they see the challenges and the opportunities around the energy efficient renovation of the building sector, and how their work is connected to this field. So first, Jan, I am turning to you, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the floor and for the invitation. Good morning, everyone. You talked about the potential and the consumption of buildings in the EU, and indeed buildings represent a huge potential. How to reach our targets in terms of energy savings, climate neutrality, energy security, etc. From the EU legal framework, we have an obligation to save at least 11.7% of final energy consumption compared to a baseline scenario, which in practice, for example, for the Czech Republic, means we have to save 20% of energy consumption in comparison to the year 2021. This poses a huge challenge, and naturally we turn to buildings as one of the solutions how to reach these targets. However, there are many challenges in front of policymakers, such as me and colleagues in the capitals. How to stand in front of them and in front of the fulfillment of these targets. First of all, in any drafting of strategy process, we need the data. And there is a lack of data on buildings, which is spanning throughout the EU, and this is the case for us. We gather some data on buildings, of course, it's an obligation, also from the EU through the Eurostat, but the new directives and our planning requires more data for us to be able to think strategically which buildings to target, what sectors, etc. This is a specific problem in the public sector because we do not gather data on public sector at all. It's usually interlinked with the services. Therefore, we don't have data on our municipalities, on their building stock. So this is a huge challenge how to get at this data, because municipalities are burdened with administration, they don't have capacities. So we have to address this issue, I think, first before drafting any long-term renovation strategies or its update. And what we are planning to do is to introduce a monitoring requirement in some sort of, because we already monitor state buildings, which are ministries and other state institutions. We have a monitoring system, and we would like to enlarge the system to all municipalities, so we have a clear picture of the building stock, so we can prepare strategies and financing schemes. Another challenge is low renovation rate, which is an issue in the whole EU. In the Czech Republic, we have a slightly higher renovation rate than it's the EU average. However, if we want to reach our energy efficiency goals and decarbonisation goals until 2050, we have to increase the renovation rate by at least 20% to reach the decarbonisation of the building stock, which is a huge challenge because we encounter issues spanning from insufficient financing to low capacity of the construction firms, not sufficient material, etc. I think this is the issue in the whole of the EU currently. The low renovation rate is also influenced by split incentives between the owners and people renting the apartments. So I think there is a legal and moral obligation to deal with this issue. So the most influenced parts of the society, being the low-income households who live in rented apartments, have some sort of measure how to tackle their energy situation. So somehow also coming to the energy performance on buildings directive, we have to deal with the minimum energy performance of standards of buildings. And we have to motivate the building owners to renovate, even if they rent the apartments and basically they have no issue with the energy bills. I think another challenge which is characteristic to V4, but mostly to the historic capitals, are historic buildings, which need a special attention. And if we want to decarbonize them, we need to come with innovative approaches to these buildings. And we have to talk with public society and architects, historical society, and we have to come with a solution very quickly, because in the Czech Republic, for example, the historic building stock, especially for state buildings, is huge, and we have to tackle this challenge as well. I talk a bit about financing. I think maybe we could talk about it a bit later, but the financing is a huge issue, especially for low-income households, even though we have historically the highest amount of subsidies for building renovation allocated now in this period until 2030. If we calculate the investment needs to reach the targets and to decarbonize all the buildings, we need approximately 100 billion euro. And we have about 1/5 of that in the public financing schemes. So we have to somehow mobilize private capital, banks. They will play a huge role, also because of the taxonomy. They think they are ready to tackle this challenge, but we have to come up with blending mechanisms for financing to provide investors sufficient financing to renovate the buildings. So if I conclude, I think I mentioned a lot of challenges, and I think a combination of measures spanning from regulation, financing, and also behavioral measures are very important to reach our targets and tackle this huge challenge in front of us.
Okay, thank you very much. I have like 100 questions in my mind now, just based on what you said. But first, please, Eva, just share your thoughts with us, your introductory remarks.
So good morning, everyone. I'm also glad to be here in a restricted audience environment, but it's a more friendly way of speaking about this problem. I think there was a lot of impediments mentioned already. So I do not want to duplicate these ones, because of course all these countries are facing the same difficulties in this regard. I would like to call the attention to two other dimensions that might be interesting. You mentioned the split incentives, which is a very important phenomenon, but fortunately enough, in our region, split incentive has a little bit lower relevance because of the fact that here in our region, vast majority of the residential stock is owner occupied, so practically it's privately owned. So this is a fortunate thing from a split incentive point of view, but of course it's much more difficult from an organizational point of view, because it is also very funny many times when we hear in the European Union's conferences that the medicine for energy poverty is the renovation of the buildings, which is totally true, because you save a lot of energy and your bills will go down. But of course the owners have to pay for that. And on the other part of the balance, not I mean, they are not tenants, they are owners, and they have to finance it. And of course, it creates a lot of problems, a lot of financial problems, and also thinking about multifamily buildings and the multiple ownership, it creates a lot of organizational problems. So I think our region is specific in this regard. We have some advantages with regard to split incentives at least, but it creates much more problems with regard to financial solutions and organizational solutions. But I'm sure we will speak about it later on. So I don't want to go into details with this, but we have to bear in mind. And the other thing which we really crossed in our work, because we are dealing with mainly residential and mainly multifamily building renovations for decades in our research institute, but more from a social and financial point of view, is that, and we also created some renovation roadmaps recently for different types of multifamily buildings, and what we have faced is that there is no such a renovation scheme which is so-called energy efficient renovation. This is a renovation of a building which had energy efficiency aspects and many other aspects. I mean, pure technical things. Many of our building stock is just simply run down. So they have structural problems, they have very basic technical problems, and we are speaking about doing energy efficient interventions, and we are just calculating the savings and everything which comes from this energy efficient intervention. It's another word. And we are speaking about a renovation package, and in renovation roadmaps or renovation passports, if we consider it really what it means, we have to include all these measures. So the leaking roofs, the broken pipes, the electricity pipe shortages and everything. Because if we are dealing with the building conditions, we have to include this whole topic. This is what we have really experienced. We were working with a historic building, let's say 120 years old. Insulation would be a very important thing. Fortunately, it was not a heritage protected building, so insulation was possible. But the whole basement was damp, the walls were wet, and we had to solve this problem together with the insulation. And insulation provides a partial solution for this, but you have to also integrate a lot of other things, water insulation and everything which doesn't have or has a kind of indirect link to energy efficient results. And unfortunately, it has a very deep impact on the financial model, because the market-based financial models, of course, they are based on the payback periods and turnovers and everything which comes a return on investment, which is very good when we are thinking about energy efficient interventions. But even energy efficient interventions and the energy efficiency first ideas, meaning that you have to insulate first, it has a high payback period, I mean decades. And if you include all the other necessary structural things which you have to do, because you cannot do after you insulated it, I mean, these, let's say, the 20 years becomes 40 years, which is very, very difficult to finance from market sources. So it is very obvious that you need public financing in it. And it was very interesting, but what was already mentioned, that at least in the Czech Republic, at least 1/5 of the needed funds is available. I think it's great anyhow, because it can really move the private market. But this is something that we have to take into a consideration, that energy efficiency is part of something from a building point of view, but it definitely not the word itself.
And when Jan said that 1/5 was there, I also had this idea of, wow, this is great. You have 1/5. This is wonderful. Please, Miroslav.
Okay, good morning also from my side. Thank you for the organizer to bring me on this panel. I think this one is the most difficult, because energy efficiency, yes, it has to come first, but it's always the last and the least, I would say, sexy topics of all connected of the green transition, which I think actually prescribes how we dealt with it before the crisis. We've done numerous research and reports between, I would say, 2012 and 2020, and mostly focusing on Czech Republic. We were basically lacking behind. We were lacking the, I would say, organizational structure, how to tackle this issue, how to build this from the scratch to a meaningful operation, which Jan currently represents. And I think we made an impressive progress, but I think it's 10 years past already. So there's a lot of homework to be done. And I'm also afraid of meeting the targets for 2030. I would say 20% budget on the grants is enough, because if you use some kind of leverage, you can actually go there. If you use extreme leverage, which is typical for building stocks, I would say it's possible. But there are many different issues. First, when the crisis struck, we actually made natural savings, not technical ones, but natural. We simply switched off the heatings. We basically stopped the lights, and it was, for me, it was amazing, because last year we were dealing with how much gas we will have to curtail supply from in restrictive order to sustain the supply, and it was amazing to see that there are 20% savings natural in the system. How much of these savings will last, it's a question in itself. I think it basically goes into the basic operation of our households. For example, in the Czech Republic, there was a huge debate, which I think is relevant for all the Eastern European bloc. 23% in the apartment temperature in the apartment block. It's horrendous. It increases the bills significantly. We yesterday heard that the European import bill rose from 400 to 600 billion euros. So it's an important topic. The prices skyrocketed. They provided natural incentive to do the most easy and the most relevant technical solutions, like photovoltaics, heat pumps, basic change of doors, windows, those which are easy to tackle, ready to be built. Those kind of technical solutions now have a payback period between 5 to 9 years, which are, I think, tremendous for most of the private operators, like households, kind of normal industry, and commercial buildings. So we are there. What's the question is how it will evolve further, because yes, electricity will probably stay high, so electricity production will be incentivized with this, especially the PV panels. The heat, I'm not so sure, because the gas price is already falling down. And also we have a huge obstacle in transition, because most of the current renovations counted with gas as a transitional fuel. And this probably won't happen, because I think the market will still need 2 to 3 years to gain further trust in gas, and to gain a certain price signal, which will definitely be lower than it is today. Nevertheless, the crisis increased or skyrocketed the installation of photovoltaics. We had like 50,000 photovoltaics installation in the January to June 2023, which is, I think, more than 60% increase, or it's actually the same number as it was last year. And we are expecting something like 80,000 installation this year, which is a tremendous number. With the heat pumps, it's similar. 2021, 30,000, 2022, 60,000, and we are expecting like 60 to 80,000 heat pump installation this year. Those are amazing numbers, but it creates issues of its own. It puts enormous pressure on the supply chain. Basically, there are companies which have very huge or inflated demand, and now they are reducing the demand for next years. So they are kind of wondering how much to order, how much employees they need for going further. There are frauds in the system, where certain companies were just the fraudulent companies from the beginning. They never wanted to deliver, they just wanted to take the invoices in. And this actually creates a trust issue for going further, and which we are also seeing on the market is that there will be not enough quality installation, that there will be definitely a quality issues, And when we will see the quality, I would say, prolonging the repayment period, making further problems for the tenants, it will reduce the further potential of those installations. So that's an opportunity in itself to increase the level of trust. My predecessors already mentioned that there are issues in the supply chain. Basically, the renovation companies or the building industry is lacking the personnel right now, also related to crisis in Ukraine, which was the source of employees for a long time. We are seeing lack of materials, where skyrocketed energy prices also reduces the capacity to produce insulation, bricks, and like normal typical materials which are needed for the construction. So the construction costs are actually also rising quite significantly. So reduced supply and increased price, not a good mix to make the technical solutions. And what was also mentioned, we are mostly focusing the renovation on those who are not that needy, who have the money, that doesn't feel the savings that much. Yes, it's important, but I would say the lower quarter of the population would benefit from those solutions much more. Jan already mentioned that the money are not flowing there. There's a usually issue with the tenants, that they are not owners, but the tenants in the buildings. And we are also having the demand to pay either upfront the solution or pay just after it is finished, which I think is a crazy situation for those who are living basically on a state budget already. You can't expect those kind of population to repay the solution at the end of the time. And also what's increasing the issue is that current interest rates are also pushing forward the repayment period, especially for those longer terms issues. So any kind of mix of financing is challenged with the rising interest rates. I also promised that I will say a little bit about commercial buildings, which I think we won't be discussing that much. On commercial buildings, I think we are in much more better shape. At least the tenants there go for quality buildings. They require high standard. Maybe what is important that if you imagine a Class A standard tenant like Microsoft, Google, etc., it's not only about energy efficiency, it's about the standard of living or well-being of the employees. So energy efficiency is not always the priority. And what we saw in the actual projects, yes, the buildings are very modern. There are enormous data points inside the buildings, but nobody is managing them correctly. And we saw the cases where the similar building like this one was heated by a heating source, and HVAC was reducing the temperature simultaneously. So basically, you were heating the heat out of the building. So that's amazing, and it was a Class A building, 3 years old, and definitely the building has the propriety to be energy efficient, but you have to manage it correctly, which we are currently not doing. So here I would probably stop my introductory remark. I think there's a lot of challenges. Unfortunately, very less solutions, because I think we are not that imaginative enough. We don't have innovation in how we tackle the energy efficiency. And I think from the grants perspective, we have to take some risks to actually gain something more than we've gained in the coming decade.
Thank you. And actually what you said about stable market conditions and legislation is really, really important. What we also see in Hungary, that because of the always changing legislation connected to renewables, for example, to household renewables, you have companies dealing with PVs who got, like last summer, they got so many demands in 1 month as they had like during 1 year before, and then it just the whole the legislation changed again, and then they had to say goodbye to a lot of workforce, and we don't know where they will get back this workforce again if the legislation changes. So it's very, very difficult to plan like this. Actually, if I can just stay a bit in talking about Czechia, because there is this new paper that was just published by SFPA, REC, OSW, and AMO. Decarbonisation of the household heating sector in the Visegrad countries. And there are some very interesting graphs in the document also about the role of different fossil fuels in the household sector. And for example, for Czechia, it says that for household space heating, that 12% is based on coal, and for district heating in Czechia, it's almost 50% of district heating is based on coal. And as you just said, Miroslav, the plan was to have natural gas as a transition fuel and to phase out coal with the help of natural gas. So what is? Do you have a new plan in Czechia? What is the new plan for phasing out coal? And then connected to this, I would also turn afterwards to Eva to ask about the situation of biomass in Hungary, which is also a challenge. Do we have sustainable biomass? Is it a solution in Hungary and in Czechia? So please, as you wish.
I will maybe start with the transitional fuel in terms of gas. Yes, most of our district heating is on coal. I would say it's a bigger issue than the coal in the single buildings as a single source of heat, because there you can replace it either with biomass or other sources available at the space. But the district heating, I think, is a big issue. We have a target to switch off the coal power plants, which is 2033 now. We are now considering that it will be earlier, probably 2027 or 2008, because basically the whole value chain is not profitable anymore. So you have a risk of switching off this. I think it's 1.5 million people on the district heating on the coal. And yes, gas was considered 2 to 3 years back a transitional fuel. To my knowledge, most of the operators scrapped these plans and are now waiting what will happen, either in grants, where the taxonomy is a huge impact, and on financing. And we heard it yesterday in the financing panel that no serious bank will back up a gas-fired plant, but also gas heating power plant. It's a huge risk for the operator, and they are not willing to go for that. There are plans to go a different way, smaller CHP units, basically decentralization of the larger systems and networks is considered. I think it's a way forward for certain networks. Some of the networks can benefit from waste incineration or other fuel. So it's a case-by-case basis, but I think we still have a huge deficit in planning and in strategy in the central district heating. And unfortunately, the work will have to be done much faster than anticipated previously. I think we have 2 to 3 years, and then either we will have to provide subsidies for coal or switch off the system at all. So it's an urgent matter.
And Jan, when the situation is so difficult with phasing out fossil fuels from a heating system, is energy efficiency getting more into focus? Because if we need less energy, we just need also less fossil fuels, or this is still not the time for energy efficiency to get at its at the level where it should be?
I think it's getting more and more focused. It's reflected in the amount of public grants that we have for energy efficiency. So yes, it's perceived as one of the most important solutions. And to complement what Miroslav said about gas being a transitional fuel, I think it's still on the table. We are preparing a new state energy concept, which is basically the most important energy strategy in the country. Its update, so I think we will have to look very closely at gas in district heating, not in buildings, because we already during the crisis last year we already banned any subsidies for small gas boilers, so we are not subsidizing gas in building renovation or just boiler replacement schemes, because we already foresee that we have to decarbonize buildings also because of the EPBD directive, but also it's a necessary step to decarbonize the economy. So we are already doing that, and we put much more emphasis and more subsidies on heat pumps. And when I'm talking about heat pumps, we also, and the operators of the district heating plants, they also have plans to modernize district heating systems to low temperature systems, but first they need renovated building stock, because these low temperature systems are not able to heat poorly insulated buildings. So it's a step-by-step approach.
And Eva, I know that in Hungary the consumers are very sensitive, obviously, to energy prices, and we have a lot of buildings where there is natural gas and also solid heating opportunities. So how do you see the situation in Hungary for biomass and the switch between the two? What is your experience of how this developed in the past year?
Honestly, I'm not an expert on fossil fuels and biomass heating in Hungary, so I have kind of partial information on this. But usually the colleagues who deal with it emphasize the role of this type of heating systems with regard to energy poverty. According to the calculations of Habitat for Humanity in Hungary, about 40% of energy poor households are heating their buildings with wood, practically. And they are mostly in the countryside. So practically it's less an urban issue, it's more a rural issue, at least in Hungary. And it's very much connected with energy poverty. So it's 100% much more sensitive issue, because it's not only about technicalities, but it's also about poverty and social issues and how this should be tackled. And it was very interesting, and it is also a little bit connected to heat pumps and the problems with heat pumps. And it also, the colleagues from Habitat emphasized this kind of findings, which they really found in their fieldwork, is that there was a subsidy scheme that subsidized photovoltaics on mainly rural areas, so below a certain income threshold. So they could put PV panels on the roofs, 100% subsidy was provided for that, and it, in many cases, it should have been, it was included, heat pumps were included, so a new electric-based heating system was installed together with the heat pumps. And the outcome was terrible. So practically, this is one of the experiences that heat pump without an insulation, it's a disaster. So energy efficiency first is really an important principle. What they found is that these heat pump techniques, they just run down in 3-4 years' time, practically, because they simply cannot get, they are overstressed by the fact that they have to heat a house without an insulation, because these are not optimal for them either. And of course, these energy poor households, what they can do with a broken system after some years, and they got 100% subsidy to install it without any consideration about how to make it in an optimal way. So this is what our colleagues emphasize, that heat pumps without insulation never do that. And it is also very important, and it was also very interesting what you have mentioned, that based on the crisis impact, the heat pump installation increased very much. And it might not be the case in Hungary for many other reasons. But we also, what we experienced, and I mentioned to you that we were creating renovation roadmaps for multifamily buildings, panel buildings, and traditionally built buildings as well. And this is a big question. So if no new waves of gas-based heating system can be subsidized from public funds, but you still have to do something with the heat system. So what you can do in a multifamily building, let's say, because it's not only about that some of the owners change their system into heat pumps, because there are many others on gas, and of course about, let's say in Budapest, about 30% of the residential stock is in district heating, but 2/3 is not. And also in other cities it might be a little bit less relevant. So you have to do something. And we also calculated how much it would cost if you centralize the heating system. So from individual gas boilers, you create a central heating system. It's an enormous amount of money. I mean, it has a 45 years payback or something, at least in those buildings where we did it. So, and regarding the heat pumps, if you insulate it, it's much nicer, because as far as I know, I'm not an engineer, I'm an economist. But heat pumps has their limitations with regard to the weather. So if it is too cold, then it might have some technical problems. But also they need electricity, of course. And if all the owners and all the flats use heat pumps, the old electric vehicles, I mean the electric pipes in the walls are not sufficient for that. That's one thing. And this is also what I heard from a colleague from a municipality, that even pipes in the ground are not sufficient for that. So when you are just switching from gas-related solutions to electricity-related solutions, you do not only have to think about flat scope, but you have to also think about the building, and you also have to think about big electricity systems in the neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, there was one question from the audience that was also very similar to the question I wanted to ask you about whether there are similarities in the building stock of the region. Of course, we know that there are some, like panel buildings or district heating, that can be considered as an opportunity when we talk about renovation, and it's more like a question to which we know the answer. Is the pace of renovation good enough? No, it is not. But what is? Do we have best practices? Do we have examples of, I don't know, technologies or strategies that we can share with each other in the region? Do you have any experience related to this?
Okay. So if I may, on the multi-apartment buildings, or what do we share? I think we share the high amount of multi-apartment buildings and shared ownership and the administration of the buildings. We have the Association of Shared Owners of the multi-apartment buildings, which by itself it's a barrier to renovation, because all the owners have to, almost majority, have to agree on the investment, and there might.
Sorry, do you have 100% in Czechia, for like 100% of the owners have to agree, or
I think it's a blind majority.
Blind majority. It's a majority.
Majority. Yeah. Simple. Yeah. And there might be, for example, low-income households, which do not have the financing to support the renovation. So what we are trying to do now, and we are in a testing phase, we have one of the subsidy programs subsidizes renovation of multi-apartment buildings. And if there is a household which is low income, the building receives a bonus per each household, which is low income, that is living in the building. So we are trying to address the energy poverty issue in this way, and hopefully there will be a good feedback on this, and that we will resolve also some of the social aspects of the renovation. And yeah, I think this would be a good practice.
I'm very curious about the results of this, because this is really a kind of impediment, and I think there are some good practices in this regard. But I think, and just thinking about also the green savings system, which the Czech Republic has, and also in Slovakia, I think there is a subsidy scheme for the renovation of buildings for 15 years now, or at least. So I think there are great achievements, and I think a relevant share of the residential buildings can be tackled with this. So I think the magic in this is its long-term and predictable nature, because homeowners association cannot make easily renovation decisions, even if it's 51% or 50+1. But still, it takes time, and also the preparation and everything. So if like in Hungary, if there are subsidy schemes sometimes opening, the last one was in 2015, so many years ago. But it was open for a day or something, because it was just taken away. And then we are waiting for the next one for 8 years now. So it's not predictable, which means that you cannot really create plans and make decisions and make cautious decisions about the renovation. So I think one precondition is predictability. And if it is predictable, it needs less amount of subsidy. This was also an experience. So there is a trade-off in between, because it also means that the market players, meaning the banks, can create their products on this, co-financing the subsidies. And it's much more useful than just pouring to the owners, I don't know, 80% subsidy and see who takes it. So I think the vast majority probably of the renovations can be tackled with this. The other issue is the mixed ownership and the mixed social composition of the buildings and energy poverty, or simply poverty, let's say. How it can be tackled. And that's why I'm very interested about the pilot, because what you have mentioned is that you provide a bonus to the building itself. And if I understand it correctly, it means that the building itself decides how to distribute it between the owners, because there are wealthier owners and poorer owners. And I do not know how it will work, because I think the poorer owners might have the problems with paying the increased common fee or the increased renovation fund, and probably not the average. So I think it might be very interesting that how you tailor it to the problematic owners. Because, for example, if you are just, and we considered, for example, the Lithuanian scheme in this regard a useful one. I do not know whether you might be familiar with this. In that scheme, the owners who got a heating compensation anyhow, they are entitled to get 100% subsidy. I mean, it's loan financed, so practically in that case, I mean, the Lithuanian subsidy scheme is loan financed, and then they get a bonus, a state bonus based on the results of the renovation. But in this case, as far as I know, the state steps in, and the state will pay back. The state will pay back the loan installments even for 20 years. But it means then that the owner who is poor gets this 100%, and not the building itself. But it also, I think there is a requirement that the poor owner has to vote for the renovation, otherwise the household loses the heating compensation, the eligibility for the heating compensation. So it's a kind of push a little bit, but I think it might be reasonable. So I think the magic is if the system is predictable and takes care for the lower income people in some way. There are difficulties in this, so we can speak about this, but as a philosophy, I think it would be very very important. And of course, the technical conditions and energy efficiency first, and everything should be embedded in this subsidy scheme.
I would like to react on this. I think you originally asked whether we have enough best practice. I would say no. I would say the predictability of the scheme in the Czech Republic is very good. I would say the main programs of energy efficiency works for us. They work for us, I would say, 15 years now. You can, if you go out, you will see many successful cases for the panel buildings, where I would say, going around the country, majority is probably already insulated in some way. Yes, the standards are pushing up higher and higher, so that the earliest one should be renovated again. But I would say, yes, it is there, but we are still not able, and that's the reason why I would call for more best practice to tackle the complicated cases. The easier ones, where the money is, where there is knowledge, where there is will, they are already there in certain manner. We can discuss the quality, but they are already energy efficient to a certain manner. What we are missing is how to tackle those difficult client journeys. And I would say we need client journeys, experiences. We need more campaigns on the actual results, because I actually believe that the lower income, low education people are so still distrusted in the state, in the government, in the grants. They don't know what are the benefits for them. It's too difficult to handle this. They don't have the capacity to deal with such situation. And we have the complicated issues with different ownership structures. So we have to tackle those. So we need to share the best practice. We need to tackle the obstacles, and give enough incentives to solve such situations. So I think we need more innovation in this matter, and the best practice sharing to actually provide enough ammunition for that.
Yes, of course you can.
I know it's not my round, but I think it might be important
no, it is your round.
To complement a little bit this one, because I think it is very important what you have mentioned, that practically you have a streamlined method for many years and there are results, very visible results, but now you reach the complicated to handle stock. But according to our experience, and I told you that if there is a scheme which is sensitive to low-income families, this is a key, which is true, but it is not what is everything, because mainly according to our experiences, a multifamily building, not the income level, which is the crucial one. We had experiences with many different buildings, and what we also experienced, that there were renovations in buildings with a much higher share of low-income people, and there were no renovation with a much higher social composition. So it's partly about the money, but not really and exclusively about the money. So I think we need organizational innovations in this regard, and campaigns, of course, it matters. But also, based on our experience, and this is where renovation agencies, more complicated version of one-stop shops might come into the picture, which is also spreading information, but also working with the owners. So the complicated ones you can get if you have a very intense presence in the general assemblies, and not only once. We had pilot buildings about the renovation roadmaps. In Hungary, there is no subsidy scheme, so we couldn't convince them to make deep renovation, which we tried because it was far from their reality. But at least after 3 meetings, being part of their general assemblies or organizing general assemblies, we could convince them that they should think strategically and increase their renovation fund in order that they accumulate some money. If there will be a subsidy scheme, at least the own share can be paid from this. So there, even after 3 meetings, there was a really big step ahead, and these were complicated communities. So I think this is the time when the state should not only think, or the public actors should not only think about the money, but how to drive these communities throughout the way of the renovation. And this is the next step, which all these public support schemes should take into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for sharing this, because I also wanted to stress the importance of one-stop shop type of centers, because research shows that the lack of money is as important or as scary, or the amount of money needed is as scary for owners than the lack of information. That we all have renovated in our lives, or we know someone who renovated, and we all have like primary or secondary information about how stressful it can be, and really like 50% of the reasons why people do not start renovation is because they are afraid that the experts will just they will cheat, they will not come, they will disappear, they will do like work with very bad quality. So if we have a list of trustworthy people who can help you with your renovation, this is as important as having the funds needed. I wanted to ask you, yes, about predictability. That we also see that if the system of funding is not predictable, you have low-income households who are waiting because they have no other choice, but you have also higher income households who are waiting because they don't want to be the losers who just renovated before there was free money for renovation. So sometimes they're waiting for years because maybe the money will come. So if there is no state state budget for renovation, what other financial schemes can work where private funding is also channeled into renovation? How do you see this?
I would start with that. I already mentioned the issue with rising interest rates. It was very easy to take a long-term loan when the interest rate was 1.5–2%, and actually the banks were very eager to loan to the ownership associations and those, because in itself it's a very credible customer to the bank. So at that time, I think the financial tools were not that necessary, because you were able to basically get the required capital. The question is whether it reduces or increases the ease of doing the actual renovation and its payback. Now, when the interest rates are a little bit higher, I think it's the time to actually mix the grants into some certain incentives to create a long-term repayment of the solutions. Especially, I already mentioned that even in a grant scheme, you either have to pay it at the beginning or just after the renovation ends, which you usually don't have enough money. And you've mentioned information. Yes, we know a lot of people who done something, and we get information from that. But if you go deeper and deeper into how to be more efficient, you came up with a complexity and enormous budgets. And usually what happens is that those who want to renovate have certain money saved already, they are ready to start, but they find out that either the price of materials go up or the level of renovation needed for subsidies are a little bit higher than is their threshold. And I think in that case, some kind of loans or loan structured tools makes sense, because those people want to undergo the renovation. They have one single opportunity for next 20 years, and in that phase you decide whether it's a simple or a complex or a deep renovation. So helping in this level, also with I would say engineering planning, makes sense.
And what do you think about the energy, the role of the energy performance contracts? Can this be solution? What is your experience in Czechia? Because in Hungary we see that trust is not there for these solutions.
I think EPC is it's a good tool, but I don't think that there is a capacity of the ESCOs to ensure large-scale renovation of our building stock, because there is not enough financing on their side to, pre-invest the renovation, and there are certain barriers on the EU level in terms of the accounting of public debt, for example, for state buildings, which make the EPC practically unusable for state buildings, which are ministries and these kind of buildings. So I think there is a potential, but it will not save us.
Yeah, if I may, I would say EPC is a very nice contract because it basically gives you the certainty that there will be a payback, which then is about the trust or credit risk of parties involved. I would say in the Czech Republic, we already have a couple of ESCOs which have enough trust to undergo in the market. The capacity is increasing, but as Jan mentioned, there are certain barriers to what this system can actually do. It's very good for municipality buildings and especially for the large renovation, like large hospitals, a couple of swimming pools, etc., large complexes where the savings are significant. The investment budget is, I would say, for 40 million euros plus. Then it makes tremendous sense for municipality to go via this strategy. Unfortunately, this contract is not very suitable for industry or commercial buildings because the repayment period is behind the actual returns they are requiring for new projects, or they are either doing it from their cash or doing it differently. And for private entity, for household and those ownership clusters, I think it's not again a good solution because the projects are too small, and I would say that the credit worthiness of individual households is not there. So yes, it's a good tool because the savings are guaranteed, and I think it could be calculated relatively precisely, but it has its specific market position.
With regard to private financing and how far we can go, either it's an energy performance contract or any other part, because it can be even energy obligation schemes or anything like this. So there might be very different ways of market finance. I think we should consider first, and I think this is what you also emphasized, that before the crisis or some years ago or before the interest rates increased, it seemed to be more or less stable to finance substantial renovation based on a long-term loan. But now this might not be the case because the interest rates went up and also the investment cost went up. And I think, and in Hungary, for example, you cannot get a 20 years loan for this purpose. So we even didn't think about this even before. But I think what we have to consider here is really that what is the long-term purpose with regard to the climate and, for example, the minimum energy performance and everything. So what we would like to achieve with the buildings. Because I think there is a trap if we include purely market financing. Of course, it will go for the lower hanging fruits and the lower payback periods. So there might be investment types that might happen in these buildings which create a very serious lock-in effect for the future. We also met with this. For example, a building which partially insulated itself with it's a panel building, 8 centimeters insulation. It was a now currently I think it has a D level energy performance, so it's not bad. But what you can do with this? You cannot put I don't know a 15 centimeter wooden insulation for the other part, because then the heat breach problem occurs again. So you have limited space for further things. And what you have also mentioned, that you insulated your buildings 15 years ago, and now you can insulate them again. You will not do that. So practically for 30 years, you will not touch upon these buildings. So if there is no proper insulation, which is the basis for everything, because you can change the heating system afterwards, and it has a much lower payback period. Insulation might have a much higher one, but you do not change insulation every decade. So this is the place where you can, and it doesn't seem to work on market basis, you have to push public funds for this, because this is where you create your basis for the future. So this is inevitably needed. Even if there are market solutions, this is not enough, because you will not reach your target. And just a last word on this, I always thought that EPC is not suitable for the buildings. And there were also many examples with my colleagues who are working in municipalities. They really work with ESCOs, or at least negotiated. And it turned out that any kind of investment which has a payback more than 8-10 years, I mean, you can forget about it. And of course, a complex renovation of a residential building, it's out of question. And there are organizational issues, and you have to negotiate with them, a lot of uncertainties, and of course, uncertainties in the legislations and prices and everything. You cannot handle it over 10 years. But yesterday, when I had just a very nice dinner with the Polish colleagues, it turned out that there is a new ESCO pilot in Poland, which is about really an ESCO financing, a complex insulated, a new heating system, disconnection from the district heating, which, I mean, you might have some structural considerations with this regard, but at least it was a disconnection, the new geothermal heat pump system and insulation of buildings, and it is privately owned multifamily buildings, theoretically an ESCO scheme. I'm very curious.
Thank you. Please.
I would like to.
Then we're going to turn to the last.
Add a little bit more on the insulation, because increasing the centimeters of the insulation costs you probably 10% of the capex, maybe even less. But if you are at the moment of renovation, you don't have the money somewhere, you don't go to the highest standard. You fix your standard, or what sometimes happens, you don't go into the grants incentive at all, because you are not able to touch 15 centimeters, but only, let's say, 8. So at that time, the state should be creative, so should create some kind of incentive to add further capex, maybe to repay it in 5 to 10 years, but increase the level of energy efficiency at that renovation, because otherwise it's lost for 20 or 30 years.
And now there are so many questions and topics, but we are running out of time. I just wanted to say that we touched upon the problem of whether we should go for deep renovation or we should go for step-by-step renovation in the right order. What is the best? But I would like just to, as a final round, just get 2 questions from the audience. And sorry for those who sent questions. First reason is for not reading all of them. The screen is very small and I cannot always read what is written there. But the second is that there are so many questions and so many topics on the table. But so there were 2 questions actually about how public awareness can be raised connected to renovations, and how this could help the process. And linked to this, or I decided to link these 2, is how the topic of energy security and energy security logic could be integrated into this awareness raising communication. And what is your experience? Does this help if we are not talking only about saving the climate, but also energy security? Does it help in public awareness raising? Please.
Can I go quickly on the awareness raising? So we, indeed, it helps a lot. It works in practice. What we did during the crisis was to, for example, establish a hotline where people could call and ask what they can do. Then we focused on the most affected, on the low-income households, and we educated our social workers to provide very easy advice on energy efficiency, and then they would link those parties to our, let's say, more expert consulting services that we have. We have a network of energy consultancy centers which provide advice on energy efficiency and building renovation. So it's all interlinked. And then we launched a network of local action groups which focus on preparation of energy efficiency projects for low-income households. So they basically take the project and they go step by step with the household, and they prepare the application to the subsidy program with them, and they procure energy assessment for the building, etc. So we work a lot with the technical assistance measures, and we are launching a one-stop shop next year, which should integrate all these services in one place. So we actually help with the whole process of building renovation to the building owners.
Thank you. Could you just quickly add your final thoughts? Sorry, we are running out of time.
Okay, I think it was amazing to hear what is happening, but I think the engine behind is that you have something to offer. There were some OSS, so one-stop shop seeds also in Hungary, and there were very few clients, even in the crisis period, because what you can offer, I mean, without money, without subsidies, without tools that you can offer, these one-stop shops are practically dying. So I think awareness raising, it's very important, but awareness should be combined with a public strategy and public funds.
I will also conclude that, yes, for me, it's about the terrain work with the people on their location, on their situation, because, as we said, the low-hanging fruits are gone. Now we have to work deeply with the population, which, for certain reason, is not able to achieve the savings. Mostly it's about money. I wouldn't focus on security of supply. That's a macro level, which those people are not seeing. And they won't need to see money, and they won't need to see how they are able to get to that money, because they are usually lacking access, either to the grants, to the financial capital, or something else. So the work with such people on their situation, dealing either the General Assembly or dealing with lack of available capex and on the account makes sense, and is the way forward, because again, low-hanging fruits are already gone.
Yes, and you're right that energy security is a macro thing, but we can call energy security also at a household level the fact that we can pay for our bills or not. So it's how I meant. So it's what I meant. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for the questions in the audience, and sorry again for not being able to respond to all of them. So we hope that energy efficiency will get even more in the focus, or much more in the focus, and that energy security and climate security will go hand in hand in the future for a better climate neutral world. Thank you very much for being here.